Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. I wasn't the type of guy who was easily upset. In fact, I prided myself on my thick skin. Life had thrown its share of challenges my way, and I'd faced them all with a sense of humor. So, when Clara started making little jokes at my expense in front of our friends, I figured it was nothing, just a quirky part of her personality. At first, I didn't even mind. After all, everyone loves a good laugh, right? Especially at my expense. But when the jokes turned into something more deliberate, something that felt almost personal, that's when I knew something was off. She wasn't just teasing me anymore. She was using me as her punchline. And as her audience laughed, I stood there silently, wishing I could disappear. It had started small. A light-hearted remark about my tendency to overthink things. James, you're the kind of guy who spends hours trying to pick the right cereal. Good luck with making decisions when we're married. Everyone chuckled, and I laughed along. But inside, something started to twist. Every joke was like a little jab at my self-esteem. And it wasn't just at parties anymore. It was everywhere. During dinner, while watching TV, or even at home in front of family. If we were out with friends, and I'd make a casual comment, Clara would somehow twist it into something ridiculous. Oh, James thinks he's a financial genius because he knows how to budget for groceries, she'd say. And everyone would laugh. The more it happened, the more it started to feel like she was playing a game. A game where I was always the loser. One night, we were at a party at her best friend's place. It was a fancy dinner party with all the high society types. People who loved to talk about their accomplishments, their latest trips, and the amazing things they were doing. And there I was, a simple guy, not trying to impress anyone. I just wanted to enjoy the night and have a decent conversation. But Clara had other plans. As we sat down at the dinner table, Clara casually dropped a comment. Oh, James. He's such a planner. He spends hours making lists about lists. I'm pretty sure if he didn't have a list for how to get dressed in the morning, he'd forget how to put on pants. The room erupted in laughter. At first, I tried to brush it off. But when I looked around at the faces, I saw that they weren't just laughing. They were genuinely entertained. Some even looked at me with pity, like I was some kind of punchline they had to tolerate. I didn't laugh. I couldn't. It was one thing for her to make fun of me privately. But this felt like an attack. She was setting me up to be the joke, and everyone was in on it. But what happened next was what pushed me over the edge. We were in the middle of a conversation with a couple who had just returned from some exotic vacation, and as I started to contribute something to the discussion, just a simple story about my recent work trip to Chicago, Clara cut me off mid-sentence. Let James talk about his exciting work trip to Chicago. He's probably the only person who can make a 3-day business trip sound like a hostage situation, she quipped, her eyes sparkling with amusement. I felt my cheeks flush. The room once again burst into laughter, but it was different this time. The laughter didn't feel lighthearted. It felt cold. People were laughing, but there was something in their eyes. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was just the uncomfortable realization that they were all in on something they shouldn't have been. But no one stopped. No one said anything. And Clara? She was on fire. That night, I went to bed angry. I had to turn off the part of me that wanted to confront her, to tell her how much it hurt. She'd apologize, of course. She always did. But nothing ever changed. So, I did what I always do when I'm upset. I bottled it up. I told myself I was overreacting. She didn't mean it. It was just her sense of humor. But I knew deep down it was more than that. She was using me, and I was letting her. But something shifted in me that night. When I woke up the next morning, I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand by and let her keep making me the joke. I wasn't going to let her turn me into a punchline, to make me feel like I was less than her. I had to do something about it. That afternoon, I started thinking about how to turn the tables. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how easy it would be. If she could turn me into her punchline in front of everyone, then maybe, just maybe, I could do the same to her. But this time, I would make sure it hit harder. This wouldn't be a harmless joke. This would be a lesson. The perfect opportunity came sooner than I expected. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Clara had crossed a line, and I was done being her punchline. But the problem was, she had a way of making everything seem like a joke. Every time I tried to confront her about how hurtful it was, she'd give me that smile, sweet, almost apologetic, but it always felt like she was trying to brush it off. I couldn't confront her directly. I needed to do something smarter, something she wouldn't see coming. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Clara loved attention. She thrived on it. Every party, every gathering, every dinner, she was the center of it all. People loved her. She was charming, witty, and always the life of the room. But in all those moments, I noticed something else. Clara loved being in control. She loved making people laugh, but she loved making them laugh at my expense the most. She was the one calling the shots, and I was just the guy on the other end of her jokes. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't going to go after her directly. I wasn't going to pick a fight. Instead, I would wait for the right moment, a moment when she'd be at her peak, when the spotlight was fully on her. And that's when I would make my move. The next few days were spent playing it cool. I didn't say anything to her about how I was feeling, but I started making mental notes of the situations where she was most likely to crack a joke at my expense. I wasn't just watching her, I was studying her. I learned how she liked to be the center of attention, how she enjoyed having her audience. She always set the stage perfectly for herself, making herself the hero of every story, the star of every moment. Then it happened. Clara invited a few friends over for a dinner party. It was her idea, of course. She was going all out, with fancy appetizers, wine flowing freely, and all her usual energy that made the room light up. As always, she was the life of the party. I, on the other hand, was the quiet guy in the background, making sure everything ran smoothly, but not saying much. At least that's how I usually played it. But not tonight. As the evening went on, Clara started telling one of her classic stories, the one where she rescued me from a terrible situation. It was one of her favorites. The story went like this. I had once gotten completely lost on a trip, and Clara had to come to the rescue, guiding me back to the hotel. I had no idea how I ended up in this predicament, but in Clara's version, I was helpless, bumbling, and completely out of my depth. Of course, Clara made it sound like she was the hero who swooped in to save the day. The whole room burst into laughter as usual. But this time, I wasn't laughing. I could feel my pulse rising, my chest tightening. I could hear the snickers, the way her friends leaned in to listen to her version of the story, and I felt the anger boiling inside me. How many times had I heard this story? How many times had I been the fool? I was done being the joke. As Clara wrapped up the story, everyone was still chuckling, and that's when I decided to speak up. Well, you know, it's funny, I said, my voice cutting through the laughter. Clara turned to me, clearly not expecting me to say anything. Her smile faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. What's funny? She asked, arching an eyebrow, clearly amused. I leaned back in my chair, looking at her. It's funny how you tell that story, but you leave out the part where you got lost, too. Remember when we were in that tiny town? I had to navigate us out of there when your phone died. There was a pause. Clara's face froze, and for the briefest moment, I could see the confusion in her eyes. She had clearly never expected me to turn the tables. It was subtle, but enough to make people stop and think. No, Clara replied, her smile wavering. I was the one who got us back. I didn't back down. Really? Because I remember you freaking out when you couldn't get a signal, and I had to figure out how to get us back on track. Funny how that part always slips your mind in the story. The room fell silent. A few people exchanged confused glances. Clara, to her credit, tried to laugh it off. Oh, James is just being dramatic. He loves to make himself out to be the hero, she said, her tone a little sharper now. But I could tell she was rattled. I wasn't done yet. I mean, you do love making yourself the hero, don't you? I said, my tone just a little more pointed. You tell all these stories, but you never mention how much you love having everyone laugh at me, right? You never mention how much you enjoy being the center of attention, even if it means making me look stupid. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Clara's smile completely faded, and for the first time in a long time, I saw her face without the mask she wore for everyone else. She was uncomfortable, and it felt good. I could feel the tension in the air. Her friends were looking between the two of us, unsure how to react. Clara, as quick-witted as ever, tried to change the subject. Oh, don't listen to him, guys. He's just in one of his moods. But I wasn't letting her off that easy. I'm in one of my moods, huh? That's convenient. You know, I thought you were supposed to be my partner, not the one turning me into your punchline every chance you get. You make me look like a fool, and then you get mad when I say something about it. For a moment, it felt like time had frozen. Clara was completely caught off guard. And for the first time in months, I felt like I had control of the situation. The night didn't go as planned for Clara. I could see how shaken she was, how her confidence wavered. Her friends, though they tried to make light of the situation, could feel the shift in the air. The evening went on, but the dynamic had changed. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just the guy in the background. I was the one in control. The rest of the dinner went by in a blur. Clara tried to regain her footing, but I could see the cracks starting to form. The rest of the evening wasn't the same, though. Her usual lively, charismatic self had dimmed slightly. People were quieter, more cautious around her, as if they weren't sure whether to laugh at her jokes anymore. I could tell she was uncomfortable. Good. Maybe now she'd see how it felt to be the subject of unwanted attention. As we cleaned up, Clara was oddly quiet. I didn't say anything to her. I just went about my business, washing the dishes and pretending like I wasn't waiting for her to make the next move. I could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut through. Finally, after what felt like hours of silence, she spoke up. "You're being ridiculous, James," she said, her voice tight. "It's just a joke. Why are you blowing this out of proportion?" I didn't turn around. "It's not a joke when it's always me, Clara. It's not funny when I'm the one getting embarrassed every single time we're around your friends. You've made me the joke for so long, I don't even recognize myself anymore." She was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. "You're being so sensitive. I didn't mean to hurt you. You know I love you, right?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was tired of hearing her apologize without actually changing anything. She'd always brush things off, telling me I was overreacting. But I wasn't overreacting anymore. I was just done. The next few days were strange. Clara tried to act like nothing happened, but I could tell she was walking on eggshells around me. She kept texting me, sending me random messages about how she wanted to make things right, but I wasn't buying it. The damage had already been done. Then, about a week later, I got a text from one of our mutual friends, Sam. "Hey, we're having a party at my place tonight. You guys should come. Clara's been acting kind of weird lately. Thought maybe it would help if we all hung out." I knew what this was. Sam was trying to get us to make up. And maybe, just maybe, this would be the perfect opportunity to drive home my point. I wasn't about to let Clara off the hook. I wasn't going to play the role of the sad, misunderstood boyfriend anymore. I was going to make sure she knew exactly how it felt to be the center of unwanted attention. The night of the party, I showed up, trying to keep my composure. Clara, as usual, was the center of the room. She was laughing, talking to everyone, and I could see how she had slipped back into her old rhythm. But this time, I had a plan. As the night went on, I let her tell her usual stories, her usual jokes. I let her bask in the attention. But I wasn't just watching from the sidelines anymore. I was waiting for the right moment. It came when she started her favorite story again, the one about me getting lost on that trip and how she had to save me. She was mid-story, the room was laughing, and I could see the glint in her eyes as she built up to the punchline. I stood up. "Actually, Clara, I think you're forgetting something," I said, my voice cutting through the conversation. Everyone turned to look at me, and Clara's smile faltered. She looked surprised, but I could see a flicker of unease in her eyes. "I think you're forgetting the part where you got us lost first," I continued, leaning in just a little. "Remember when your map app failed, and you couldn't even figure out which direction we were supposed to go? But somehow, in your version, I'm the clueless one?" Her face drained of color, and the room fell silent. People looked between us, clearly not sure what to make of this new twist in the story. Clara opened her mouth, probably to laugh it off, but I wasn't done. "Funny how you love being the hero in every story, huh?" I said, my voice low but steady. "But maybe, just maybe, you should start telling the truth for once. Maybe you should start being real instead of just making me the punchline every single time." Clara's expression twisted. She opened her mouth to speak, but she couldn't find the words. The room was still silent. This time, there was no laughter. No one was waiting for the next joke. It was like the life had drained out of her. For the first time, I saw Clara as she truly was, vulnerable. The confident, larger-than-life version of her had been stripped away, and all that was left was the girl who had been using me to feel important. The room stayed quiet, the tension palpable. I looked at Clara, and for the first time, I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara's usual bravado had disappeared, replaced by an uncomfortable stillness. Her friends, The same people who would usually burst into laughter at her every word now looked between us with a mix of confusion and pity. I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't care. This was no longer about them. It was about Clara and me. Clara opened her mouth, probably to apologize or brush it off, but she couldn't find the words. She looked at me, her eyes wide, like she hadn't expected me to turn the tables like this. And for once, she wasn't the one in control. The awkward tension hung in the air for what felt like an eternity. I wasn't going to say anything more. I didn't need to. The point had been made. She was the one who had used me as a joke for far too long, and now the tables had turned. A few moments later, Clara finally spoke. "I didn't mean for it to go this far, James," she said, her voice low, almost defeated. "You know I was just kidding, right?" I shook my head. "No, Clara. You didn't mean for it to go this far, but you've been making me the punchline of your jokes for so long that I started to believe them. It's not just kidding anymore." Her expression faltered. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "I was just trying to be funny." I didn't realize. I interrupted her. "Yeah, well, it's not funny when you're always the one laughing, and I'm always the joke." The party went on, but it wasn't the same. Clara's energy had shifted, and so had mine. I wasn't playing the passive partner in this relationship anymore. I was finally standing up for myself. As the night wore on, I could see Clara trying to salvage the situation, but her usual confidence was gone. It was like she had been exposed. Her playful jabs at my expense no longer seemed so charming. Instead, they looked manipulative. And for once, she was left to face the consequences. The next few days were strange. Clara texted me, apologized repeatedly, but I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Her apologies were always followed by the same behavior. How could I trust that this time would be different? But I wasn't ready to let this go. Not yet. I needed more than just words. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for, but I knew one thing. Something had to change. Either she would respect me, or we would have to go our separate ways. The following days were a strange kind of limbo. Clara did everything she could to win me back. She sent apologetic messages, tried to plan special outings, and even brought up our old memories, hoping to remind me of how good things had been. But I wasn't ready to forgive her just yet. The pain of always being the joke, the constant embarrassment, still lingered in my chest. I wasn't sure if I could just let it go. But what bothered me more than anything was the pattern I had finally seen clearly. It wasn't just about the jokes. It was the manipulation, the way she used humor as a tool to control the narrative. She made me the clown, and everyone else her audience. She would pretend that everything was fine with a smile, but underneath it all, she was getting what she wanted: attention, dominance, and the satisfaction of being the center of the room. One night, after a few days of awkward silence, I invited Clara over to talk. We sat down in the living room, the same place where we had shared so many moments, but now everything felt different. There was no warmth, no comfort, just an unsettling tension. "Clara," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I don't know if you understand how much your jokes hurt me. You always made me the target, and for a long time, I went along with it because I didn't want to make waves. But now, I can't pretend anymore. It's not just about the jokes, it's about respect." She looked at me, her expression softening. "I didn't mean to hurt you, James. I'm sorry, truly. I never realized how much it bothered you." "Of course you didn't realize," I replied, my tone more bitter than I intended. "Because you were too busy being the star of the show. You didn't care about how I felt as long as you were getting the attention. You used me to make yourself look better, and I let it happen. But I'm done now." There was a long pause, and for the first time in a long while, Clara didn't know what to say. Her usual response, her charming ability to deflect or laugh things off, was gone. I could see it in her eyes. She was starting to realize just how far she had pushed me. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "I never meant to make you feel this way." "Then why did you keep doing it?" I shot back, unable to keep the frustration out of my voice. "Why did you keep making me the joke? Why did you keep humiliating me in front of our friends? If you really cared about me, you would have stopped." She remained silent for a while, clearly struggling with my words. I could tell she was trying to come up with something, anything, that would make this conversation go away, but I wasn't going to let her off the hook this time. "I thought I was just being funny," Clara finally said, her voice trembling a little. "I didn't think it was a big deal. You've always been so quiet, so reserved. I thought I was just bringing you out of your shell. I didn't see it as making fun of you." "Exactly." I replied, the weight of my words sinking in. You didn't see it. Because you were too busy being the one everyone laughed at. But now I see it. And I'm not going to be the joke anymore. Not for you. Not for anyone. She was quiet again, her eyes searching mine for some sign of reassurance. But there was nothing left to say. The truth was out, and I wasn't going to pretend that it didn't hurt. The power had shifted in that moment, and for the first time, I wasn't the passive participant in our relationship. I was standing up for myself. I think we need some time apart, I said, breaking the silence. I don't know if I can keep doing this with you. I need to figure out what I really want, and I need to see if this relationship can even survive after everything that's happened. Clara's face dropped. James. Please. I'll change. I swear I will. I didn't respond right away. The words felt too heavy to say out loud. She wanted me to believe that she could change, that everything would go back to the way it was before. But I wasn't sure it could. I wasn't sure I could. I don't know. Clara, I said, standing up and walking towards the door. I really don't know. And with that, I left. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had irreparably shifted between us. Over the next few days, Clara's calls and messages became more desperate. But I didn't respond. I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest with myself for the first time. I had been so blinded by my desire to make her happy, to keep the peace, that I had lost sight of my own worth. I couldn't let her make me the punchline anymore. I had spent too long living in the shadows of her jokes, and I wasn't about to keep doing it just because it was easier. It wasn't easy to walk away. It never is, but it was the right thing to do. And now, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life. The days that followed felt like a strange kind of relief mixed with guilt. Clara's calls became less frequent, her messages quieter, almost as if she was waiting for me to cave in. But I didn't. I kept my distance, something inside of me finally standing firm in a way I hadn't done before. I had spent years letting her make me feel small, and now that I had spoken up, I wasn't about to back down. At first, it felt like a victory. I was in control, not her. But then, as the silence stretched on, I started to doubt myself. Was I being too harsh? Was I punishing her for something that could be fixed? I couldn't help but wonder if, after everything, we could ever go back to how we were before. But then I reminded myself of what had happened. The jokes, the laughter at my expense. I had let it slide so many times before. This time, though, it was different. I couldn't unsee the way she had treated me. It wasn't just a harmless joke anymore. It was a pattern, one that had worn me down over time. One evening, a few weeks after I had walked away, I ran into one of our mutual friends, Max, at a coffee shop. He was sitting alone, sipping his drink, and when he saw me, he waved me over. James. Hey man, how's it going? He asked, sounding genuinely glad to see me. I hesitated for a moment, but then I sat down. It's going all right. How about you? Max looked at me carefully before responding. You know, Clara's been a wreck since you guys stopped talking. She really misses you. I'm just saying, she's been pretty down. I didn't know how to feel about that. On one hand, I could tell Max was just trying to keep the peace, but on the other, a part of me felt a pang of guilt. Had I been too harsh? Was she really as sorry as she said she was? I don't know, man, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. I don't think it's just about missing me. It's more about how she treated me, you know? She made me feel like I wasn't even important, like I was the punchline to every joke. Max's expression softened, and he leaned in a bit. I get it, I really do. But sometimes, Clara doesn't see things the way you do. She thought she was just joking around, but I know she didn't mean to hurt you. Maybe she just didn't realize how much it was affecting you until now. His words hung in the air, and I found myself torn. Part of me wanted to believe that Clara had just been oblivious, that her jokes hadn't been intentional. But another part of me felt like I would be letting her off the hook too easily. Could I really forgive her without addressing the deeper issues? Maybe, I muttered, glancing out the window. But I need more than just an apology. I need her to understand what she did, not just say the right words. I can't go back to being the guy who just lets it slide. Not again. Max nodded, clearly understanding where I was coming from. I get it, James. I'm just saying, if you want to make it work, maybe you should give her a chance to explain herself. She really cares about you. I took a deep breath, thinking about everything Max had said. Was I ready to forgive her? Was I willing to give her another chance? I wasn't sure yet. But I knew that if I was going to move forward, whether with Clara or without her, I had to make sure it was on my terms. I'll think about it, I said finally. But right now, I just need space. Max gave me a reassuring smile. I get it, man. Take your time. You don't have to decide anything right now. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. On one hand, I had finally stood up for myself, but on the other, I couldn't ignore the fact that Clara still had a hold on me. Maybe it was the history we shared, or maybe it was the hope that things could go back to normal, but part of me still longed for things to be the way they were. But I knew I couldn't go back to that person, the one who let everything slide, who always played the background role. I had to make a decision, and it was clear to me now, whatever happened next, it had to be on my terms. I didn't hear from Clara for a few days after my conversation with Max. At first, the silence felt good. It gave me time to think, to reflect on everything that had happened. But soon, the quiet became suffocating. I hadn't realized how much I had relied on the chaos she brought into my life. As much as I hated to admit it, I missed her. But I also knew that I couldn't go back to being the person I had been in that relationship. I couldn't just let her turn me into the joke again. Then, a few days later, I got a message from Clara. It was short, simple, and to the point. Can we talk? I stared at my phone for what felt like an eternity. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep moving forward without her. But another part of me, the part that had always been the silent partner, the one who had let her jokes slide for so long, wondered if maybe she had truly changed. Or if this was just another attempt to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. I decided to meet her. We agreed to meet at a small cafe, the same place we had gone to for our first date. It felt like a lifetime ago. When I walked in, Clara was already there, sitting at a corner table, her fingers nervously tapping on her cup. The sight of her, the way she held herself, was so different from the confident, playful woman I had known. This Clara looked smaller, unsure of herself. I sat down across from her, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt heavier than it had before. Finally, Clara looked up, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. "I'm sorry, James," she said softly. "I've been thinking a lot about everything you said. And you were right. I've used humor as a way to control the room, to make myself feel better. But I never realized how much it hurt you. I took you for granted, and I made you feel like you weren't enough. I'm really sorry." For the first time, her apology didn't feel empty. It didn't feel like she was just saying the words because it was what I wanted to hear. There was something in her voice, something raw, something real. But I wasn't sure if that was enough. "I don't know, Clara," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "I don't know if an apology is enough. You've hurt me in ways I can't just forget. I spent so long putting up with your jokes, thinking I could laugh along. But it was never really a joke for me. It became my reality." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't wipe them away. She just let them fall. "I never wanted to make you feel like that. I thought I was just being funny, that we were just having fun. But I see now that I pushed you too far. And I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make it right." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that this time things could be different. But the other part of me, the part that had been hurt so many times before, was scared. I was scared of falling back into the same patterns, scared that I would once again be the punchline. "Clara, I don't know if I can just go back to the way things were," I said, feeling the weight of the words. "I don't know if I can trust that you won't do it again." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand. I don't expect you to just forgive me right away. But I want to change, James. I know I've messed up, but I want to make it right." I looked at her, really looked at her. It wasn't just the apology I was hearing. It was the vulnerability in her eyes. She was admitting that she had been wrong. For so long, I had watched her act like she was untouchable, like nothing could ever bring her down. But now, I saw a side of her that I had never seen before, the side that was willing to own up to her mistakes. But I wasn't sure if that was enough for me. Could I forgive her? Could I trust her again? "I need time, Clara," I said, standing up to leave. "I need time to figure out if I can even trust myself to let you back in." She nodded, her face a mixture of relief and sadness. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a strange sense of peace. I didn't have all the answers yet, and I didn't know if Clara and I would ever be able to get back to what we had. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was making the decisions for myself. And that was a step in the right direction. The days following our conversation were quiet. Clara respected my need for space, and I used that time to really reflect on everything that had happened. I was no longer the passive, apologetic guy I used to be. I had seen through the facade, through the way she had manipulated situations to keep me in the background, the way she had made me the joke. I couldn't just let that slide anymore. But something had shifted in me. I had found my voice, my strength. I had realized that I deserved more than being the punchline. I had spent far too long bending to her will, letting her take the spotlight while I stayed in the shadows. The worst part was that I hadn't even known how much I had allowed her to control me until that moment I stood up for myself. And I wasn't going to back down now. A week after our conversation in the cafe, I received a message from Clara. It was the usual, apologetic, with hints of hope that we could work things out. But this time, something was different. She seemed almost too eager. Her tone had shifted from sorrowful to almost desperate. That night, she invited me to another party, one she was hosting at our place. I hesitated. A small part of me wanted to go, to see if we could maybe start over, if the healing process could begin. But the other part of me knew better. I had spent far too long being the background character in our story. I showed up, not as the passive guy who would let her make a fool out of me, but as someone who was now in control. I walked in, and there she was, Clara, dressed to the nines, the same confident, charismatic woman I once adored. But now, all I felt was a strange emptiness when I looked at her. The charm, the jokes, the humor, it all seemed hollow. I didn't waste time. I went straight to her, and without giving her a chance to speak, I said, "Clara, I can't keep doing this. I've thought about it, and I've realized I'm not the person I was when we started. I don't need to be your punchline anymore. I need to be with someone who respects me, who doesn't make me feel less than." She blinked, her face momentarily stunned, but I wasn't going to stop now. "I'm done, Clara. I've given you enough chances, and this time, I'm choosing myself. I'm done being the joke." Her face contorted for a moment, a flash of anger crossing her features, but I could see it wasn't the anger of someone who was justifiably upset. It was the anger of someone who had lost control, someone who realized they had pushed too far. She tried to play it off, trying to keep up appearances in front of her guests. "You can't just walk away from this," she said, her voice faltering slightly. "I'm already gone," I replied. "And you should know something. This isn't just about us. This is about me not letting you treat me like this anymore. You've spent so long being the center of attention, but now it's time for you to face the consequences." I turned to leave, the air in the room thick with tension. Clara's friends, once so eager to laugh along with her jabs, were now silent, watching the scene unfold. I could see the wheels turning in their heads. Clara, the life of the party, the one who had always been able to command the room, was now the one on the defensive. Her world, the one where she had always been in control, was slipping through her fingers. As I reached the door, Clara called after me. "You'll regret this, James. You'll see. You can't just walk away from me." But I didn't look back. I knew what I needed to do. I knew that walking away, choosing myself, was the only way forward. I had spent far too long letting her make me feel small. It was time for her to experience the consequences of her actions, the consequences of thinking she could control me, of treating me like a joke for her amusement. The next few months passed. Clara tried reaching out a few more times, but I didn't respond. I started living for myself, rediscovering who I was outside of her shadow. I traveled, I spent time with friends who respected me, and I began to understand what real happiness felt like. Slowly, I rebuilt my life. As for Clara, the whispers started. I heard from mutual friends that people were starting to notice her behavior, how she had always been the star of the show, but without anyone left to prop her up, her charm had begun to fade. At first, it was just a subtle shift, but soon it became clear to everyone. Clara's need to be the center of attention, to use people for her own amusement, had alienated her from the very people she had once relied on. It wasn't karma in the traditional sense, but it was fitting. Clara had spent so much of her life making others feel small to make herself feel bigger, but when the curtain fell, there was no one left to laugh at her jokes. And I was finally free. Free from the weight of being her punchline. Free to live my life on my own terms, with people who respected me, who saw me for who I truly was. For the first time in years, I could honestly say that I was happy. And I was never going back to the way things were. Please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.